Alright, yeah, welcome guys. Today we're going to be going over a poker hand I dealt with in my last tournament. So I was around, I think I was almost big stack. This lady, she just became big stack. She was running really, really well. And we're going to go over how kind of this hand went down. So first things first, I was in the button with ace-9, ace-9 of diamonds. See that? And the villain had, she had the king of hearts, king of diamonds, right? And so right off the bat, we can see some equity values here. And yeah, we're going to take this into the lab, and we're going to take a look at kind of the math behind all this, okay? So first things first, I'm going to open up a notepad here. So our villain, okay. So our villain is we know her to be a recreational player. She's kind of a tighter player. I'd consider this more of a nit. Not really going to play as a tag. But she plays very, very tight. She's not going to play super aggressive. And she is raising from the cutoff, or not the cutoff, from the low jack, I believe. She's raising from the low jack with in terms of the tournament structure, the big blind is, I believe it was 1k 2k with a 2k ante. Yeah, and she pre-flop raises to 6.5k, which is around 3.25, and at this stack depth, that's a pretty aggressive bet. It's definitely a kind of a stronger bet, especially given her player profile. And we are in the button with around 50 to 60 big blinds. I think she has maybe a little bit more than me, so maybe like 60 to 70 big blinds. And so we know that generally, taking this is probably a little bit risky, but we're in position and we have a pretty decent, pretty hand. Yeah, and so let's go over this hand here, okay? So first things first, I think calling here in terms of our equity here, I'm going to run it out for you guys. So when we're thinking about this hand here, we can't think that this player has pocket kings necessarily, but we know that she's a recreational, she's a tighter player, nit, and not really going to play super aggressive. So I'm going to open up Equilab here, and I've already kind of set it up here. But basically, we know that this player is a more tight player, right? So I'm in the button, so I'm going to say that I have ace-9 of diamonds, and yeah, it doesn't have the right values, so we're just gonna call this middle position too. Yeah, and because when we're thinking about in a tournament, we're not thinking about specific, or in any cash game also, we're not thinking about specifically what kind of hand do they have. We're not trying to read from preflop because that's kind of difficult when she just bets out. But we can assume that she has aces in her range, kings in her range, queens in her range, jacks in her range, tens in her range. And then given her tighter profile, we're thinking maybe ace king suited, ace king off, ace queen suited, maybe king queen suited, maybe ace jack suited, maybe ace queen off, something like this. And yeah, so we're gonna run these Equilab right now, and we're gonna see the equity is 68.37% to my 31.63%. So generally speaking, we have to think that in this kind of range, or based off her betting pattern, I am, not always going to make the right call here, right? So I have 31% equity. I think, we have a lot of reverse implied odds. We're losing to ace-10, ace-jack, ace-queen, ace-king, aces, not to mention kings, queens, and jacks. But we have a suited pair here, so I think, and we're in position, so it's not the worst call here. In terms of the math, I'm gonna write this out. So on the flop, or on the pre-flop, so EV, which is our expected value, typically when we're trying to make a call, we want to make sure that the EV is positive, which means that in the long term this decision is correct, right? So Basically the EV is going to be the percent that we think will win. And with ace nine of diamonds, I think when I'm playing, it's really hard to recognize that it's not actually that strong of a hand, although it looks pretty as a suited, but it's not a Broadway, right? So based off Ecolab, we have 31%, roughly 31.5% equity to win this. And the pot, well, pre-flop, she raised, so there's 5K already in the pot, and she's raising to 6.5. So basically 5K plus 6.5K equals 11.5K. So we're gonna call 31.5% to win a pot of 11.5K, right? And we're gonna subtract that by the percentage that we're gonna lose and the amount we have to call. So in this case, it's 68.5, and yeah, we have to call 6.5. So I think I actually did an incorrect calculation here in my notebook here, but we can do this out right now. So it's going to be 0.315 times 11.5. Okay. Oops, sorry, not 11.5. 0.315 times 11,500 minus the minus 0.685 times 6,500. Okay, that just did not come out the way. Okay, sorry. Let me let's retry that. Let me actually just grab a calculator instead of, I know, I'll do the math for you. 0.315 times 11,500 minus 0.685 times 6,500. So this is actually, now that I'm looking at it, it's actually really interesting because I made the calculation incorrect in my on my notebook, but this is actually minus 830, which means that this call is actually pretty bad. I think this preflop call is actually negative EV. I didn't even realize this, but yeah, we're gonna continue this. I think in position, given I have a decent stack, and it's suited, I think a lot of times when I'm in a tournament, I think that this is a good call. But clearly we can see from EV wise, granted it's not that much. This is a negative EV call, so this is not a call you should be making, especially against a tighter player, right? So although we've constructed a tight range already, it's very possible that she doesn't have ace queen, she doesn't have ace jack suited, and it's really just these cards, right? Granted the equity is still pretty similar, but so, but granted she's betting 3.25, she's really representing a pretty slim amount of hands, which is honestly probably jacks and ace queen suited up, right? And when we look at that, okay, equity is still the same. I don't know, I don't understand how life works, but okay. I think actually tens is not going to be in her range. I genuinely don't think she's going to be raising that expensively with the tens. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the flop comes jack of diamonds, 10 of diamonds. Oops, sorry. Jack of diamonds, 10 of diamonds, and 6 of clubs. Clubs. Okay, and now you can see there's 55.86% and 44.14%, right? And likewise, if we run this in with our flop here, it's going to come jack of diamonds, 10 of diamonds, and 6 of clubs. And now we can re-enumerate this. And we're going to see that now it's 54% equity to 46% equity. So granted we did make a loose call or a negative EV call. Based off this flop, we're actually getting some pretty good stuff. So we have the jack of diamonds, we have the 10 of diamonds, and we have the 6 of clubs. And she leads out for 15K. Okay, so she leads out 15K into a pot of I believe it's around pot size actually, but into 18k. So, yeah, 15k into a pot of 18k, and we have, sorry, I'm sniffing so much allergies, but the EV calculation is pretty similar. It's the equity we have, so 45.69. So 45.69% times how much is in the pot, which is going to be 18k plus the 15k, so 33k, minus the equity we have, which is, or minus the opposite, kind of the equity we don't have. So 54.31% times 15,000, and let's do the calculation here. Okay, 33,000 minus 0.5431 times 15,000. And so we're going to see that this is a positive 6,931 call, right? So clearly we struck some gold here. We have redraws to straight flush. We also have the nut flush draw. And we also still have potentially an ace if she has, kings, queens, and jacks, or tens. But I think now in retrospective, this is a proper call. But we have to also think about, knowing her player profile, being a tighter knit and not a tight aggressive player, it seems really interesting that she's betting extremely heavy into into this kind of board, right? So I think when we look at her range, we can kind of get rid of some of these kind of, I think a lot of players would be c betting with completely their whole entire range, but in this case, I think she's not going to be doing this with ace queen offsuit. She's could be doing this with ace jack suited for protection. Ace queen suited probably not. I don't even think she would do this with ace king off, honestly. And given that we have the ace of diamonds, she can't really have any ace, ace of diamond, like ace king suited is not really a possibility here. So I think honestly, when she c-bets this aggressively, knowing her player profile, we're kind of getting rid of all these hands, right? So we're looking at 10. I don't think she's honestly raising tens, but we can keep it in there for now. So tens, jacks, queens, kings, aces, king, queen suited, maybe because of the redraw, and also I don't have the king of diamonds or queen of diamonds, so it's very possible. So we're gonna apply this now, and we're gonna run the solver. So the solver is still 56.84 to 43.16, which is not really much bigger, which means this is still a positive EV call. And so the turn was the 7 of spades. Let me look at the next page. Hold on 1 second. It was the 7 of spades. And as you can see, our equity dramatically decreases. And now it's basically what it was pre-flop, right? So let's go back into the solver here. And we're basically, I think, as she continues betting, we can continue to deconstruct and think about what her range could look like, right? So the turn was the 7 of spades. Okay. And now when we evaluate, given the actual percentages, she had a higher chance, but we don't know that she has kings there. And now she bets out for 20,000. So this is kind of a weaker bet on her part, but I think it was actually a pretty decent price, and it ended up making. But I think in the long term, it's not a good bet. So she bets 20k into, we had 15k plus 15k into 18k, which is 48k. So into 48k, and So let's calculate. Turn was a 7 of spades, and that actually promotes us to a gut shot as well. So we have 7, 10 jack. We have ace 9, so if an 8 comes out, we also have some more equity. So in terms of our equity calculation, it is going to be the percentage that we win. So but before we do that, I think knowing this player profile, we're really not going to see her bluffing with king queen suited ever. So let's take king queen suited out of her range. Ace jack suited, I think honestly at some frequencies it's going to check back, but I think for now we can leave that in there, which means that she has a 71% equity chance versus my 28, right? So let's actually recalculate this with these equity values. Yeah, so 71% here. So it's going to be the equity that I'm going to win. So it's 28.98 times how much is in the pot, which is going to be 68,000. And minus, what is it? 0.7102. 7102 of how much I need to call, which is 20,000. So just immediately looking at the numbers, it definitely looks like this is still a profitable call. But let's think this through a little bit. Okay, so the equity here is plus 55502. So yeah, I think making this call is fine, given that the pricing was really, really low. Now let's say if she decided to bet 30k, right? I think naturally when you have kings in on this kind of board, you know, you're not expecting 8-9 ever here, but you could be expecting some flush draws, some straight draws, king queen suited maybe, or just king queen of or just king queen in general. You know, I think there's a lot on the board that you want to be a little bit careful about, right? But yeah, so let's say that she bets 30k into 48k, and let's try to do this calculation now. So we still have that same equity of 0.2898, and we have was it 78,000 now, minus 0.7102 for 30,000. Let's see, 0.22898 times 78,000 minus 0.7102 times 30,000. Yeah, so now as you can see, it's 1,298. I think personally in this case, when the pot is already at 48k, I think, I mean, granted we didn't know, but she has the King of Diamonds blocker, which I think is very relevant for her betting strategy. But I think still for her, it's still probably better to bet a little bit heavier, right? But in terms of our range here, I think, you know, this whole breakdown makes pretty much sense, that from this turn bet we can tell that she's just on aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, ace jack suited, and not ace king suited because I have the ace of diamonds. But yeah, I think this is basically the rundown of this hand here. I think, you know, granted that she's a tight player, you know, I think even having queens here, she might just check on the turn. But I don't really think so. I think this is pretty good standard range. I think she's definitely doing this with ace jack suited as well. But if we take out ace jack suited, I'm curious what happens to the percentages. Okay, it's pretty similar. Yeah, so the river ended up being I believe it was a queen of clubs here, which, you know, wasn't great for me, and she just bet out her last hand, and, you know, I had to fold this one out. But yeah, I guess this is kind of a technical analysis of just how that hand was played, and surely we had pretty good EV calls coming in later, but I think, you know, a lot of times, given the strength of that bet, you know, we know we're dominated, you know, pre-flop. So yeah, yeah, I think, you know, she was a pretty tight player, so she could even have this as her range, which is like, you know, pre-flop, right? Like, not that great. But yeah, thanks for watching this video if you made it to the end. This is just a technical analysis of one specific hand. I know this is really long, but I think this is all the factors in math that play into this. Yeah, so thanks for watching.